You heard that, lady?
Yep. And then just because I've got it, I'm going to go ahead and roll on my real camera.
Yeah, sure.
So if you want to, it's just 1080p, but.
Yeah, if you want to send it to me, that's fine too. I can sync it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Let's just start in 3. See, you know how I'm going to do this. We're just going to talk and then I'll splice it into the show how I do. I just need to remember to look over here at my camera so it seems like I'm engaging with you.
Yeah, really.
Eye lines and such. Let's see here. That's probably all right. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Colin, thank you so much for joining me yet again on Geek Therapy Radio.
Oh, anytime, Johnny.
So I need to blame you for something, and this is kind of what got me thinking, like, I really got to have Colin on again, is you uploaded a video a few months ago, I think it was, with the Sony, a DV camera. What was it? The Sony, can you say the serial
number?
number?
Camera one, that was a Canon. That was a
Canon.
The model number is escaping me, but it was one of their prosumer ones.
Yeah.
Mini DV, I think. Yeah.
GL2?
Yes, GL2. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something too. Yeah.
So you got me going down that path because I went on a bit of a spree. You just reminded me, and that's what I'm blaming you for, is reminding me. I was like, you know what? It's been such a long time since
people love to blame me for all sorts of stuff that ends up making them happy. So yeah. I'm fine with that. You know?
Exactly. People blame me for getting them stuck on cassette tapes and stuff like that too. I was like, I feel bad because like the cassette comeback, not to get too sidetracked, but that's what we do here, is it can be an expensive hobby to get into depending on what quality you're achieving. And I kind of feel bad about that because I kind of feel bad about the cassette comeback because I feel like most people are going to be disappointed because they're going to get kind of an old crappy deck, or they're going to buy an old crappy like boombox from 1997 or something and be like, this is just as crap as I remember it. And then people are going to tell them, no, if you want higher quality, you got to get a 3-head deck and Dolby, B, C, and S noise reduction and HX extension. And like, you need to spend a couple $100 at least.
Tape is really difficult. I mean,
right.
Compared to how relatively easy like vinyl is or CDs are.
Yeah.
Tape is just like, there are so many factors there. And you're absolutely right. I mean, people just buy whatever the most convenient or cheapest thing there is, and they're getting a horrible experience. And then I am worried that if they want to go beyond that, you're right. You get to get into much more expensive equipment. That expensive equipment isn't being made anymore. So it's got problems probably that need to get fixed. So you either have to learn how to fix it yourself or pay someone to fix it for you. And all that stuff is going to cost a decent amount of money.
Right.
So by the time you're done, you're looking at it and going, wow, okay, so this tape that I bought was like $8, but I just spent like $400 coming up with a way to play it. That isn't horrible, right? And then you kind of wonder, well, why didn't I just get into vinyl or something instead?
Right. Because because the thing is with vinyl, you buy the produced album and usually, well, I won't say usually, but depending on the outlet and how much care they took into the mastering process for vinyl, you're for instance, you're going to buy a John Mayer album, you're going to put it on your $100, maybe $200 is probably good amount of money for a turntable with like an Ortophone Red or something like that on there.
Right.
And you're going to be, wow, this is what people were talking about with vinyl. The experience is great. Big art and sleeves, and I can hold a tangible thing. Versus, so most recently I can think of, and of course we got on the cassette tangent.
We always do. Somehow every time it comes back to the cassettes and vinyl.
So Billie Eilish released, not like she, turned them out of her bedroom or something like that, but she released I think it was Bad Guy, or her first album on cassette tape. As far as I've known, I haven't bought the cassette tape, but as far as I know, I think it's a Type 1 tape, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think there's any.
My understanding is there's no one manufacturing anything other than regular Type 1 ferric tape.
Yeah.
Like there are literally no manufacturing plants anywhere on planet Earth that produce chrome or metal tape anymore. So, and there's not very many that actually produce just the ferric tape either. So yeah, that's all you got.
And there used to be, maybe the last time I went on to, Musician's Friend or Sweetwater or something like that to look up cassette tapes, high quality cassette tapes to use in 4-tracks, because there are still people out there that use a cassette. It used to be, I forget who was manufacturing it, but you could get 10-minute, 30-minute, 45-minute, 90-minute Type 2 cassette tapes, but I haven't checked probably in 10 years, and that sounds right that there are
it's all gone.
It's all gone. It's all gone.
You can get like new old stock tapes off of eBay, but the prices on those are going insane. If you've ever looked up the price of a brand new metal tape, just one of them off of eBay, brand new. Yeah, exactly. Brand new, a single sealed metal tape, $30.
Oh, $40. I was on there yesterday. It's $40.
Like for one tape. And now, honestly, my own experience with a mid-range cassette deck, that one that I restored at this point probably a couple of years ago, there's not a huge difference between chrome and metal tapes.
Right.
And thankfully, there's a decent number of new old stock chrome tapes still out there. You can buy, the brick of like 5 or 6 of them for probably about $20-$30. But even then, those over time, they're going to disappear. And some people are kind of hoarding them, for their own indie music projects and like short run presses and that sort of thing that they do themselves.
Yep.
So tape is, tape just, as you would think that vinyl would be the format that would be the pickiest, right? Yeah. Like in terms of the variability with the pressings and the quality of the equipment and how that can affect the ultimate sound quality that you get out of it and all that. Tape is actually the fussiest of all of them, just because there's such a wider latitude in how well the tape itself was made.
Yep.
And the equipment that you can use to play it back on. With vinyl, you're right. Like most of the pressings that have come out, they're all very good quality. And the ones that are bad in quotation marks really aren't that bad. They're just not audiophile grade, however you really want to define that.
Yeah.
And for like $100, you can get a very serviceable turntable that won't damage your vinyl, that you can plug it into powered speakers or headphones or whatever and give you really good sound quality. So it's this weird kind of flip-flop where the equipment for vinyl is actually less expensive to get into for a decent quality than tape.
Right.
But the media is the complete opposite in price. I mean, I'm looking at, current indie tape prices when those pressings come out, vaporwave and such. You can buy a tape for $8 to $10, brand new, commercially pressed. Whereas vinyl, I don't think I've seen one recently that's been less than $25.
Yeah.
So it's so strange how this is all kind of sorting itself out with the media prices versus the quality versus the equipment versus the ease of entry into it. Vinyl is much easier to get into. I mean, the first turntable that I bought in what I'll call modern times, because I grew up with vinyl and then CDs came along and I'm like, well, screw that. I'm going to stick with CDs.
Yeah.
Probably 5 years ago, I picked up one of those $100 an Audio-Technica turntable at Costco.
Right.
Like they had a pallet of them at Costco. Like
Audio-Technica.
It's so easy to get into that now. And I'm glad because, I've said this before, there's really kind of no love lost between me and cassettes. Like I've got a little bit of a fondness for them because it was a format that I used when I was growing up. but it was always kind of a utility format for me. I never bought pre-recorded tapes back then, just because what we more or less did was we bought vinyl records and then eventually just switched straight to CDs. Right. And tapes were just that thing that we used in the Walkman or in the car. And when we had a tape, it was one that we would record ourselves from the vinyl records or the CDs that we bought. So eventually, when I no longer needed to use tape and we had CD players in cars and portable CD players, I just threw all the tapes out because it's like, I hated this format to begin with. Why am I going to stick around with it? And admittedly, part of it was because of the whole quality thing, right? That I didn't have a ton of money when I was a kid. So I always had cheap, no name Walkmans. The cassette stereos in cars weren't very good. And couple that with a relatively low quality cassette deck at home to do those dubs, and just the overall annoyance of tape compared to CD. We got really spoiled with CDs, right? Yeah. Just the instant track skip, the fact that you've got the entire album on one side, no need to flip it, no need to fast forward to wait to the end of the tape to flip or anything like that. No need to rewind when you're done. Like, just CDs were such a big push forward with technology for music that tape just instantly felt like ancient to me. And that's, not to get too far off on the tangent, but I mean, mini disc really kind of picked up where CD left off in terms of innovation.
Right.
And so that's why, like, as soon as I learned about mini disc, I'm like, I am so done with tapes right now. I bought into mini disc because my tape deck had died. And so I went to the store expecting to buy another tape deck, and I learned about mini disc, and I'm like, why would I buy another tape deck? I am so done with that.
Yeah.
And just moved on from there. So, I mean, tape has this really weird and interesting legacy, and it means very different things for different people.
Right.
And I don't think that's quite the same thing with something like vinyl. I think vinyl people have a little bit more of a consistent experience with.
Yeah.
So it's strange how it's kind of shaken out and who's gotten on board with tape versus vinyl. I mean, lots of artists are getting into vinyl now and repressing their old works and, making those available again and all that. And cassette, it's very much more hit or miss. And I'm kind of curious as to over time, not only how that's going to shake out, but also other retro formats, both audio and video.
So I can't think of this cassette comeback having the type of comeback that vinyl has for many reasons. One in particular, as you mentioned, if you buy a vinyl and you buy a decent record player for $100, you're going to have a pretty good experience. You're going to get what the fuss is about for a low point of entry. Plus, I like to say that vinyl, when people say, well, how good, because people think of vinyl records, their dad's old 1955, whatever, sounds scratchy and crappy. And I'm glad vinyl died. I don't get why it's coming back. The quality of vinyl now is so good and the components are so good. I like to say that vinyl's basically had, 130 some odd years of research and development. That's still active. There are companies making turntables and making styluses and making cartridges and one-upping each other, and the technology's going into it and getting better and better and better. Cassette died 15 years ago.
There's been no more advancement with cassettes. No one's making high quality decks anymore. You can buy new ones, but they're all and there's tons of YouTube videos about this.
Yeah.
They're all based around more or less the same inexpensive mechanism. Right.
Exactly.
Just
there's one
one Tenashin clone. Tenashin apparently themselves don't even make them anymore. It's a clone from some other manufacturer. And those can be kind of made in different ways to lessen or increase their quality based on price. But compared to like what even a mid-range deck was from the 90s, you're going to get nowhere near the quality.
Nowhere near it.
And vinyl records, I mean, kind of to get to the nostalgia, some people are turned off by the clicks and pops and the surface noise of a vinyl record. The thing for me is I actually don't really mind that so much. I mean, obviously I'm going to clean my records every time I play them because I don't want them the entire time I'm playing, right? But the occasional click and pop isn't such a big deal because the rest of the sound is so good.
Right.
You've got a full-fledged frequency response there, really only limited by more or less your speakers or headphones,
Mhm.
unless you want to get really deep into the weeds with the audiophile. The stylus is so important. Let's not go there. But
we've been there.
right. But
Yeah.
the sound quality is so good. The surface noise adds that little bit of nostalgia to it. It adds that little bit of imperfection to remind you you're not listening to a digital file of some sort.
Right.
With cassettes, yeah, you're not going to get the clicks or the pops, but you're going to get background hiss sometimes, depending on how the cassette was made.
If you spend money, you won't. But that's the thing. You got to spend money.
And you have to have the source material that was recorded on a medium and with the right noise reduction to prevent that, right? So if you're buying a brand new commercially pressed cassette on ferric tape, they're not going to put noise reduction on it either, because one, Dolby doesn't license it out anymore for new equipment. And two, because they can't guarantee that everyone's going to be playing it back on equipment that can do noise reduction. So they don't do it anymore. And even back then, back when cassettes were new, it was kind of hit or miss as to whether you would get noise reduction or what quality of tape you would get. Sometimes you'd see multiple releases of the same tape on different types of tape. Right. So that if you were pickier, if you had primarily a nice cassette deck at home that you were going to play it on, you could buy the version of the tape that was on Chrome with noise reduction. I've got a copy of Sting's 10 Summoner's Tales that's like that. Right. And ostensibly those tapes cost a little bit more, but you'd get better quality.
Exactly.
But if you just grabbed an average tape and played it on an average player, you're going to have reduced sound quality just because that's kind of the lowest common denominator. And if the high end is rolled off, you can't really get around that. It always just sounds a little bit more lo-fi than allows you to get into the music. So I think that's what's carried vinyl forward, is that in some ways it still really competes with digital. And I don't want to get into the whole vinyl is better than digital, versus whatever kind of debate, because I think each format has its own place. Exactly. But as old as vinyl is, and I like to think that vinyl became hi-fi probably sometime in the 60s. Yeah. Is when that technology advanced. You started getting stereo and just better mastering quality and all. And just they got it to the point where it was capable of sounding good. And I've got vinyl records from the 60s that just sound fantastic, right? Yep. It still just holds up. And that's what's keeping it going. So cassettes, I don't know. In my experience, in my circles, following vaporwave and future funk artists, a lot of us, I think, who buy cassettes will admit we don't really listen to them. We buy them just as a tangible way to support the artists that we like, to get something a little bit more out of it. I mean, you could drop a couple of bucks on their new album when it comes out on Bandcamp and get the download for it. And we do. But if there's a physical release, we'd rather have that just for that tangible aspect, to be able to show it off on Twitter, look what I bought. I like this artist. Here's a physical reminder of it. You can never take it away, kind of a thing. Yeah. I kind of think that's in some ways the niche that cassettes have, is that just because they're inexpensive, it's just shelf candy in some ways, sad to say.
And if somebody wants to seriously get into the cassette comeback, they're going to be disappointed. Like, just to wrap this up, that they're going to be disappointed, A, that it sounds bad on whatever machine they do have. B, that to make it sound good, you're going to have to invest a lot of money in an old machine that you will likely have to fix up and then tweak and learn how to calibrate and bias and all that. So it's a very cathartic hobby that I personally enjoy, because I'm an audio engineer and I like to tweak knobs and adjust the bias just right and A/B it between tape and source and get to do and just see how great this machine can get type 1 tape to sound, which is astonishing, by the way. But going back to vinyl, to wrap that part up for me, because we're not going to get into the audiophile part of it, you can talk frequency response. We can talk frequency response and signal.
There be dragons, man. Let's not go there.
We're not Nyquist frequencies and digital and 16-bit and 24. So the reason why I like vinyls, the way vinyls sound, isn't because it's on a black piece of plastic with the stylus going in the grooves. It has nothing to do with the actual physical format or what's being pulled out of the needle and through my ears. The reason why I like vinyl is because what it does before it gets to vinyl, it forces the audio engineers and mastering engineers to completely ignore LUFS and zero and brick wall limiters and say, We can't reproduce that on vinyl. We can't smash everything to the absolute loudest it can be. It creates separation in the mixing and mastering phase between instruments that reveals a much more open, dynamic recording. And if you can find, if they release the vinyl mastering audio files for digital download, like on FLAC, that's the holy grail. A 24-bit FLAC that has been mastered for vinyl, that you look at it, the waveform, and it's got nice and peaks and valleys, and holy crap, the instruments are over here, and the snares back here, and the singers up here, versus an MP3 or even the CDs in the loudness war, where just make it loud, loud, loud. You got no dynamic range. Yeah. So that's the reason why I like vinyl, is because of what happens before it ever gets melted into the vinyl. It's how it forces the production of the music before it ever gets released. That's why I like vinyl. And I want to get back to the camcorder point, because that's what we started with, and then we got off.
It's all connected, right? Camcorders use tape, so
exactly. So I've got some high 8 and digital 8 tapes around me that I bought a camcorder on eBay. That's where I'm going with this. A digital 8 Sony camcorder off of eBay, so that I could back up some of these tapes through FireWire. That's an interesting point between digital 8 and DV, is that it's the exact same codec. It's the exact same data. So whether you're using a mini DV camcorder or a Sony digital 8, if it's got a FireWire port, it's pumping out that raw. It's the same bits, no matter the format. So I got the digital 8 Handycam, and then I went through the nightmare of trying to dump DV or digital 8 to a computer in the year 2021, 2022. And you made in that video with the GL2.
I was going to say, like, I can understand for some people it would be an absolute nightmare, but if you use the right adapters and the right software, it's as easy as plug it in and click go, it's crazy that you can even still do that, but
with a Mac.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that it pretty much, you save yourself the trouble. And if you have a Mac, even a new Mac, going from Thunderbolt to Thunderbolt 2 to FireWire, it just works. You open up you worked in a Final Cut.
I did it in Final Cut. I haven't tested in iMovie, but iMovie and Final Cut, my understanding is there is some kind of shared code base there.
QuickTime works.
So QuickTime does it. Okay.
It does. I bought the dongle combination that you had, and I plugged it into my M1 MacBook Pro, and I don't have Final Cut, and I opened up QuickTime, and you can just click, capture whatever and select the source, and the camera showed up. The Sony didn't. This is where I'm getting on with kind of this whole thing here. The Sony does not play nice with a Mac. It does not play nice with my Windows PC with a FireWire card in the back. The Sony is hit or miss. What I went and did is I also purchased, because I'm a huge fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I know that they used, for the first 4 seasons, the Panasonic DVX 100. Specifically the 100B, and there's a couple other variants from there, but that was basically the best standard definition camera somebody could buy. So I went and bought one off eBay. I found one where the guy listed it. It's like, I think it works. I have no way of really testing it. It was really cheap. It was like $250 versus the other ones that tested works well or whatever for like $700. I took the gamble on the $250, and it is perfection. It's perfect, and the video is great, and the standard definition is perfect. I plug that FireWire into my Windows or Mac PC, and it recognized it. Boom! You've got a DV camcorder here. Open up. What do I use on PC? On PC, I use VLC. This is some really good information for people who are thinking about ingesting DV footage in 2022. VLC is free, and it's your friend, and you can go in there and you can capture from the DV source. Works perfectly with Panasonic. It's hit or miss with the Sony Handycam that I have, but I blame you for that kick. And I even went out with the DVX 100, the Sunny in Philadelphia camera, for the museum, and I filmed a very short video about bird watching in a cemetery, because the whole premise was ridiculous. I'm like, let's do a parody of Sunny, because we're bird watching in a cemetery. And It looks like Sunny in Philadelphia. I made sure that it was a parody. It's not going to hit any sort of
right.
I suppose that they, Rob McElhenney could come out and be like, or FX or something, be like, hey, this is a little too close. But I made it
whatever
a parody. I made it a parody. No one's gonna. It's a one-off thing.
Yeah, don't worry.
I don't expect any problems from it. But yeah, I blame you for getting into DVs. And what tweaked me, what like set me off on this was something you said halfway through the video or 3/4 of the way through, where you're like, I don't know why anybody would like want this kind of effect. Like, it's standard definition. It looks pretty good, but there's nothing about it that looks like something you want to use. And then you're just like, well, I guess if you want to use it, it's, it can serve a purpose, but I just don't see what purpose it can serve. For me, the purpose it served was like Sunny in Philadelphia, seasons 1 through 4. That's an awesome.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a look that you're going for, that's a look, right? Because it's digital, so you're not going to have the same noise like you would with an analog videotape,
right?
But it's still soft. It's still going to be kind of grainy. Usually, you're going to be shooting in 4:3. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, if you've got nostalgia for that late 90s, early 2000s time period, yeah. That's a good way to do it. And I think maybe that might be one small part about why that equipment still has relatively high prices. The other part, I think, is just because people need equipment to be able to archive tapes. Right. I mean, they don't make those anymore. And the decks are very expensive. And not all the decks had FireWire on them, whereas the cameras almost always did. Right. So you've got production houses and TV studios and archival services, the shop down on the corner that'll transfer anything to DVD for $20 kind of a thing. Yeah. It's just like with cassette tapes, right? They don't make the equipment anymore. So the prices on the good quality stuff just keeps going up. And the prices on the stuff that is known to work is going to be really high. Because, yeah, it's tricky to repair an audio cassette deck. It's even trickier to repair a video cassette mechanism. Yeah. There's way more going on there. So the ones that work for those shops that don't want to do the work themselves, they're just going to gobble them up. Yeah. Let me warn people right now. Colin, I hope you have never done this anytime recently, because I did it maybe a couple weeks ago when you released your mini disc special on VHS tape. And I'll cut this out if you don't want me to say I got you sent me the file, the raw file. Can I keep that in, or? Yeah. That's fine. Okay. So what I did, special one-off thing. And I'm going to do a quick little plug. There are some copies of that tape still available. They're going. So if you want to grab it, go pick one up. Pacific Plaza Records, they're available from VHS. I re-edited the entire YouTube documentary down to be native 4:3, all new soundtrack, and you get 2 bonus downloads with the physical tape. You get the file that I sent Johnny, which is basically what's on the tape, the 4:3 standard def version of the documentary. But you also get, and I know this is something you were playing with, this is where you were going, is you get a 4K video file that is the VHS tape played back through a production video monitor, like a really high quality CRT. So if you don't have a VCR, or you don't want to deal with that, or all you have is a flat panel TV and you want to know what the whole nostalgia about watching VHS on a CRT is, you can watch the entire tape in this 4K download as it's played back through period accurate equipment. And it's a trip. Like it took me a little while to figure out how to make all that stuff work right, and how to edit for 4:3 again. Cause I'm just so used, I'm so used to 16:9, and how do I make stuff look good in standard def? But it totally brought me back to when I was a kid, and, watching movies that you'd rent from Blockbuster down the street. You'd take them home, and it was movie night at home, and all the trials and tribulations that come with tape. And but so where I was going with this initially, you gave me the file. I was like, I could have some fun with it with my VCR, and I could let's see if I can record it from my computer onto the VCR through various adapters and such.
And I did, and I recorded it to the tape, and I was texting you or whatever that day. I was like, dude, just dumping the file you gave me through a roundabout way, through connectors onto the VHS tape, and then playing it back on my CRT that you can hear right behind my camera here. I have two CRTs. I've got a PC CRT over here that does like 1280 by 1024, and then over here I've got an old Sylvania, like 20-inch TV with S-Video. And I recorded the file to the cassette tape with just composite, and then I was playing it back out to my TV just through composite, and I was like, this looks spectacular. Like in real life, playing it back on just even a mediocre CRT that's probably still in your grandma's guest bedroom looks awesome. Like if you take that VHS tape and put it in that VHS player that she probably definitely has and play it back on her old TV, you're like, you would probably say to yourself, most people I think would be like, I don't remember standard def looking this good. I don't remember VHS looking this good. And it does. Right. And all of that to say, that got me going down my own little geeky trail of, wow, I'm going to go, let's see what I can pull, like some YouTube videos or digital files that I have in 4K. And let's start dumping some 4K stuff, even if it's 16 by 9 to tape, and just see how far I can push, this VHS to its capabilities and what it looks like on a standard def, real world TV. And I was doing that, and I ran into an issue that I won't really get into because it doesn't have anything to do with anything. Long story short, I was like, well, I should clean the tape player, and I don't have a cleaning tape. So let me just pull the cover off here with a Q-tip. Pregnant pause there for everybody who's cleaned a VHS player to scream at their computer screens right now about putting a Q-tip anywhere near the tape path of a VHS. I think, you can go around like pinch rollers and maybe something like that with the Q-tip. Don't anyone dare even get it within a like breathing range of a tape head. Like I was like, okay, I know not to put a Q-tip, on the tape head, but it maybe if I just go really, really light with it, I'll be okay. Nope. The tape, it still works, it still plays, but I have obviously damaged or got some little fiber of cotton.
It's the fibers, yeah.
It's the fibers of cotton.
It all comes down to the swab that you use. If you're using the cheap, drugstore cotton swabs, they're going to shred, and you're not I don't think you're really going to damage the heads because I don't think they're that sensitive. Because obviously you can run cleaning tapes through them and they survive that just fine. So it's not like you're abrading them away. It's the edges are kind of sharp on those, and they'll shred the fibers off the Q-tip and get all in there, and that'll impede. I mean, it's totally fixable. You can go in there and clean it all out and you're fine again. What you can do is you can get higher quality, like industrial swabs, where the cotton is much, much tighter. It's much tighter packed, and they're nowhere near as easy to like shred the ends on. And that works. I mean, I'm sure all the experts are still going to say, just don't do it. And I'm not telling you to do it. But if that's all you have, and you soak it really well with isopropyl alcohol and you're very careful, you can do it and not shred it on the heads. But it's best to find the right kind of cleaning tape if you still can, and just run that through.
Where do I have it? Because I want to show it on the video. I have a cleaning tape somewhere around here because there probably are some people watching, I don't know, depending on their age or whatever, that have no idea, and why would they have an idea what a VHS cleaning tape looks like. It looks like a normal, micro cassette cleaning tape. And basically, instead of I've got to reel it in here. Remember doing this, kids? Let me pull some tape up. Let me pull the leader a little bit.
Because you never had a pen that was the right size handy, so you just jam your finger in there.
Right.
And it would take forever.
So y'all can see, if my camera will focus here. How can I do that little magic trick? There we go. So on the tape head, or going across the middle of the tape, you see the end of the leader. It's the clear part. And then here comes the actual magnetic particle tape the other way. So what a tape head cleaner looks like, whether it's on what am I doing here? It's hard to do it on camera backwards and stuff. Yeah. So what a tape path cleaner looks like, whether it's cassette tape like this or VHS, is that's just like white. I don't want to call it cotton. Maybe it is made out of cotton, but it's not it's not really fibrous, so it doesn't get caught on tape heads. It doesn't ruin anything. And they make some that are called not dry cleaners, but they don't require the little drops of
you
fluid.
just run them as is. Other ones, you pop the cover open and you drip some cleaning fluid on that tape, running through it. It does it kind of a wet pass.
Right.
My understanding is the wet ones are better if the heads are really dirty and you just haven't cleaned it in forever. Whereas the dry ones are better for maintenance cleaning. Mm-hmm. If you just get in the habit of every X number of tapes, even before you have problems, just run this thing through for a few seconds. The dry ones are, I don't know. I actually haven't looked into that in forever. Like what cleaning tapes are still available, which ones are good, which ones are bad. I imagine that they're still being made because, believe it or not, VHS cassettes are still being made.
Yep.
Obviously, because obviously I've got a VHS release the tapes, and the tapes were brand new, so they had to come from somewhere. But eventually there may come a point where cleaning tapes and brand new media for VHS isn't being made anymore. So undoubtedly there you go. Undoubtedly we'll find people coming up with like homegrown solutions for that, right? Where they teach you how to take an old tape apart, and here's the right kind of material to buy and cut down to use to clean the heads, and you can wind it on the tape or something. But yeah, thankfully we're not quite there yet.
I will just say, it's just my personal opinion, that if you're of the age that you've never had a VHS player, and then you go on eBay, because you can still get VHS players for relatively inexpensive, they might even still produce them. Maybe one-off things for
very few. I'm trying to remember. I'd like to say I saw a video not terribly long ago where someone showed that off. Like they called it like the last VHS ever made, or VCR ever made. But I'd like to say that was some time ago. So its production has probably stopped.
I'd have to double check that. Maybe as I'm making this video, I'll put a little graphic on the screen saying whatever. By the way, I'm going to put links below to Colin's VHS down in my description, in the podcast and on the YouTube video I make of this. But all I was getting at the last point is, if you're getting a brand new VHS player, maybe it is brand new if they still make them. I just personally wouldn't recommend getting in there with, just use a cassette cleaning tape. Yeah. They do make them. They're on Amazon. After you do your research and see what you're doing, if the cassette or VHS cleaning tape doesn't quite do it, doesn't quite cut it, and you want to take the cover off and get into there, just do your research. Like Colin said, don't just go to CVS and get the cheap makeup, earwax Q-tips and start jamming it in those sensitive electronics, because they are extremely sensitive electronics. And if you don't know, like, things have to be aligned a certain way, like Colin said, you're not really, with the Q-tip, you're probably not going to, unless you're really jamming it, you're not going to misalign the heads too badly. But the point is that the cheap Q-tips have the fibrous things, and then you're going to play back your tape and it'd be like, why isn't it working? It's broken. It's all static, or it's got, the tracking is terrible, or whatever's going on here. So just get the VHS player, get the VHS cleaning tape, just play it a few times. There's a part of the cleaning fluid that maybe I'm just kind of blanking out or brain farting, but I think some of it says like it demagnifies also. And that's more like for cassette decks, audio cassette decks. And I was like, I don't understand. Maybe it does work. Maybe there's some chemical in there that neutralizes magnetic fields. I don't know. Yeah, you need a demagnetizer. That's what I thought. You need something. It's like a pen looking thing. Usually has a power cable coming off of it. Yeah. You just kind of like get close to the head. I don't think you even touch the head. If you do touch the head, they've got like a rubber stopper or something on it. But like, that's the only way that I know to demagnetize is to use it. Unless somehow the demagnetizing thing is built into the cassette itself. Could be. And somehow, but I don't know. Yeah, the idea of fluid. I mean, growing up, like, I think I remember using one of those cleaning tapes like twice. Yeah. Like, I mean, for the most part, you didn't care. And to kind of circle around a little bit, talking about how good, in quotation marks, this stuff looks. When we say it looks good, there's
the caveat of it looks good if you take it in context from when it was, right? But also it really only looks good if you're watching it on period accurate equipment.
Yep.
The people who are saying, oh, wow, look at how bad all these old VHS tapes look. They're looking at the output from a digital conversion on their high resolution computer or TV screen.
Right.
So of course you're going to see all of the detail loss.
Exactly.
And because you're watching it on a modern display of some sort, you're just instantly always going to compare this old footage to what that display is capable of.
Right.
It's like coming back to the whole audio cassette thing, right? If you've got an old quality, like low quality audio cassette and you're playing it back on high end equipment, of course you're going to notice the loss of detail there.
Right.
But if you play that old tape back on the car stereo of a car from the 90s where the stereo itself wasn't all that great to begin with, it's going to sound fine.
Right.
And so it's the same thing with VHS and all these other, standard def kind of retro video formats is you got to look at the entire ecosystem.
Right.
And as long as you've got that whole thing put together, then it can look amazing. I mean, I was amazed at how well my own tape looked on that PVM because I was watching it through a PVM. If I were to capture it back into a digital file and watch it on my computer screen, obviously, all of the noise and everything would just suddenly become instantly obvious and it wouldn't be as enjoyable of an experience.
Right. And so when I bust out this VHS player, and the reason I got this VHS player, I think it was like last year or something, as my in-laws were coming, and they brought like 7 or 8 tapes from my wife's childhood. I'm like, I freaking have to watch these things. And I backed them up and digitized them and everything like that. And so, but then I put the VHS player back up in the closet. I was like, I'm currently not on a VHS kick. So I back up in the closet it went. It came out of the closet again initially because I remembered somebody back in when I went to recording engineering schools and they had VHS players like, oh, are those ADATs? No, they're not ADATs. They're just VHS players with hi-fi because sometimes they would give the masters of the sessions on VHS tape, just using the audio track, the hi-fi audio tracks of VHS tape, which can reproduce like 20 to 20 kilohertz. The sound quality of recording to hi-fi audio tracks on VHS were nearly identical in signal to noise and in dynamics as a CD. They weren't exactly like CDs could do like. It was like the Red Book is like 90, 96, 98, something like that for CDs. I don't know off the top of my head what the noise floor, the signal to noise ratio for a VHS hi-fi, but the frequency response the fidelity was much better than just a cassette. It was really, really good, as a matter of fact. So recording studios would, especially before CDs became cheap enough for a recording studio to give the master on, they'd be like, okay, here's the cassette for, general, whatever you want to do with this. Here's a VHS. Send this, in some cases, send this VHS off to the duplication facility and they'll make cassette masters off of the VHS tape because this is the highest quality audio we can give you out of our studio because we don't have CD burners yet. Maybe they didn't have DAT machines, and maybe the DAT was too expensive for the artist to take and then duplicate to cassette, whatever reason. But the cheap VHS players, go to Best Buy or Circuit City at the time or Sam Ash or whatever, and buy a off the rack VHS player that says hi-fi on it and plug in the white and red left and right audio RCA cables and dump that out of your 4-track, tape player or your multi-track, whatever. And you'd have the highest fidelity that the person could possibly get at home. So that's why I brought the VHS player out, was to tinker with recording like Alter Bridge albums just to the VHS tape and be like, wow, that the thing is though, like I said, the audio quality is so good that there's none of the charm that, dare I say, cassette has and vinyl has, because the quality is so good. You might as well be listening to a CD or a FLAC or whatever, because there's no charm involved. There's no noise you can hear. There's no, unless you're really pushing it to get some sort of saturation and compression out of it. Even then, on VHS, I don't think the saturation sounds natural or good, versus pushing a cassette tape a little bit on certain sources. Anyways, got the VHS tape out, and I was like, I got this Jurassic Park video sitting over here on my Commodore 64 in the closet. I'm going to pop that in because I've had it since I was 10 years old in 1993. I put in that old tape, and I played it on the CRT behind me, and I was like, that looks really good. And it's all that to say, it's to the point that you made. If you buy a VHS player or a high 8 camcorder or whatever, and then you plug it into your 70-inch 4K TV through the composite jack, nobody at Samsung or Sony or Vizio or Panasonic was ever dreaming that the end user was going to plug in a VHS, a VCR to this TV or a high 8 camcorder. So that composite's just there it's just there. And a lot of times new TVs don't even have it at all. It's all just HDMI or Type C now, or possibly DisplayPort, whatever. So yeah, if you plug in your high 8 camcorder, you want to watch an old movie on your 60-inch 4K TV, you're gonna choke back, visual vomit, because you're like, this looks terrible. Thank God we got away from this format. Thank God we got to solid state and everything like that, and hard drives that in higher definition, because this looks terrible. But if you take that VCR or high 8 and plug it into the composite input on an old period correct TV, you might say to yourself, this looks better than I remember. It doesn't actually look better than you remember. It just looks, our only reference point in modern times is that 1080p or 4K TV doing the signal processing of an analog signal and making things look terrible. So I would argue that if you really want to get into VHS or you really want to get into some sort of analog format, that you take the extra step to try to get a period correct playback device from the era. So you can still find, old CRTs, old 4x3 TVs, sometimes on the side of the road. A really good tip, and I feel like I'm running on here, but that's what we do, is if you live in a bigger city like Minneapolis or Houston, or you live near a big city or whatever the case is, type into your Google, because a lot of people wonder this. Well, where can I find these old devices? I see these YouTube videos of Colin and Johnny and LGR using whoever 8-bit guy using all these like things, and I can't find these things. Where am I going to get a TV or whatever that does this stuff? If you live near a big enough city, just type into your Google Maps electronics recycler. That's a really good place to go looking for old TVs, old computer CRTs, old whatever, because you can cruise on eBay and be like, okay, HP, my monitor, HP Pavilion M70. There might be people on eBay like gouging like $100 or $200, $300 for this, versus you go to an electronics recycler or a thrift shop, like a resale shop, but specifically electronic recyclers, they probably have just pallets of old computer monitors. Like, dude, we'll give you $10 just to get it away or give us $10. It's not going to be the gouging you see on eBay. To that point, also, back to the cassette thing and 4-track cassette recorders. Be careful of eBay searching for like 4-track cassette recorders, like a Tascam Porta 02, whatever from back then. Because on eBay they're going to be $200, $250, $300 for a 4-track that even in its day wasn't anything better than a Idea kind of sketch pad. Versus if you know where to look, thrift shops and resale shops, but also online, if you just type the Porter 02 for sale or whatever into Google, you'll find different websites, kind of like, I think Reverb is one of them, that kind of it's a much more stabilized, fair marketplace than eBay. It's just that the layperson knows eBay. I'm going to type in cassette deck into eBay. Oh, here's a Nakamichi Dragon for $6,000. Nakamichis are going to be very expensive anyways, but if you go off of eBay, you might find them for a little cheaper. And I guess that's kind of the cautionary tale, is that when you get into vintage tech like this, the cassette comeback and things, it can be expensive to get a good result, which is why I like that tech. I think I mentioned this before, the tech around the late 90s, early 2000s. So you get the DV stuff, the Sony Digital 8 stuff, even mini disc, PDAs, things like that. If that stuff starts to interest you, I suggest jumping on it now, because you can get a Palm Pilot for $15 for $15 on eBay all day long. You can get mini disc players for reasonable prices. You can get VCRs for reasonable prices. You can get digital 8 handy cans, good prices. DV cans, good prices. What's going to happen to that era of technology, even though right now you and I thinking about it, like, who the heck would want a Sony Clie or whatever from 2003 would as a 6 pixel camera on it or whatever? Who's going to want that? Good riddance to them. We thought the same exact thing about cassettes and a lot of people, mini discs back in the day. Well, we've graduated to solid state, MP3 players and recorders and stuff. We don't really need a physical mini disc anymore. We definitely don't need cassettes anymore. Goodbye to tapes being chewed up and eaten up. But so that's the way we're kind of thinking of like Palm Pilots and things like that right now. There's going to come a day where for some reason people are going to think, oh yeah, I'm nostalgic for a Palm Pilot or a Palm 3X or whatever. And then they're going to cruise over to eBay and they're going to be $200 a piece when they aren't worth a cent over 15. So if you are interested in kind of the tech around late 90s, early 2000s, I would say now is the time to, put aside $50 or whatever you can afford to play with, because that's what you're doing here is geeking out and playing with something. For that kind of turn of the millennium stuff, do it now. Windows 98 computers are getting expensive. Windows 95 stuff's getting expensive. 486, Pentium 1, 2, that kind of stuff. We're seeing that kind of trend upwards, and it's going to get exorbitant soon. So if you want to get in on the ground floor of that kind of retro tech, VCRs and things like that, and high A tapes, I would say now is kind of the best time to do it. Yep. Yeah. I have taken up so much. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I could go. I don't know, man. Whatever. I think this is good. I've got my the baby monitor here, and I've been like eyeballing my son. Like, is he about to wake up from his nap? He's gonna do it soon. And I'd rather just kind of wrap up before I'm just like, hold on, let me go get Riker. Yeah, no. But we talked. We talked plenty. Is there anything you got coming up, or what do you think? Sorry to do this to you. Do you have in your possession, it just came to my mind, those old Sony Vaio, was it Sony Vaio Ps? The pocket ones, the really small netbooks? No, the slidey ones? Like the really little ones, like this big kind of? Or did they fold up like a laptop? Right, they close like a laptop. They were clamshell, but they were, the size of they were bigger than a cell phone, but they had like Windows XP, single core Celeron. I think they got up to an Atom, but I'll put up a video or a image on the video here. It's called the Sony Vaio P. They were very, very small, ultra sub netbooks. Oh, were they the ones that were like wider than they were deep? They kind of look like some of the PDAs at the same time. Yeah, they look. Okay. I know what you're talking about. No, I don't have one of those, unfortunately. Those are very desirable. Yeah, they look like this. Those style. Yep. But it was like 2003 version. Yeah, I don't. Those are actually very desirable these days. Yeah. Same thing with I don't remember what the series was, but they were the kinds that were like the sliders. Right. So if you remember the sliding smartphones and cell phones, where you'd flip the screen up and then you've got the keyboard underneath. Sony made some ultra mobile PCs, I think they called them. Back, in the early 2000s, along those lines. Those are going for crazy money now too. PCs. I remember that being abbreviated too. And those are going for high price. Because like I said, we were talking about eBay and searching for things from that kind of era. And I was like, well, how much could the Sony Vaio Ps be? I've always been interested in them, but back in the day, they were like $1,000 or there's no friggin' way I'd be able to even dream of affording that. But I thought the same thing about that HP Jornada I just displayed, which you can get all day long now for $90. I was like, okay, Sony Vaio P netbook running Windows XP single core Atom processor. Like, there's no way this is gonna be more than $100. Holy crap, man! They're hundreds of dollars. There, for some reason, people have picked up on that model, and they got the same idea as me. I'll just cruise on here and I want one. They're expensive now. They're almost, I would argue maybe unless you put like some very light version of Linux on it or something like that, they're not, I wouldn't say they're hugely practical.
No. They're people buy them for retro. I mean, they're leaving like Windows XP on them. And yeah. I think they buy them just to kind of tinker with for a little bit. And then the rest of it is just shelf candy, just bragging rights. I've got one of those. Okay.
Yes.
Nice. What do you use it for? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And all I'll say to kind of that point is that, I got this HP Jornada, but I do use it. I have used it to write, several scripts for the museum because it doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi. You can connect it through, if you want to just do yourself torture, connected to the internet somehow, but it's distraction-free typing. Look at Colin's reflection on the... There he is. But the reason why I got it, I was like, this is a nostalgia, but I will probably use it for some things, is because it has a compact.
Oh, right.
flash.
Yeah, you can still get data on and off of it.
Right. It's what I like to call, and maybe other people call the same thing, a bridge device, to where you can run, like people talk about this with old PCs, get a Windows 98 machine because Windows 98 still runs on top of DOS and it's kind of more modern. So you can get a Windows 98 machine that has USB 1.0. So that means that you can transfer data between an old compatible system and put it on a flash drive, a USB, and then put it in any computer from 2022. It's kind of a bridge device, meaning that you can get data off of old devices and older, put it onto this bridge device, get it off the bridge device, and put it into a modern PC. So the HP Jornada just happens to be a bridge device. I know that the VIOP we're talking about, I wouldn't call it a bridge device because it's not running on top of DOS. It's not compatible with really old stuff. Anything compatible with XP, with a few caveats, is going to be compatible with Windows 10 or Windows 11. That's a good question to end on. Just my geek brain going. Have you upgraded anything to Windows 11 yet?
I've upgraded one of my laptops to Windows 11, and I'm kind of whatever about it. Like,
I'm waiting for guinea pigs like you.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that they've got a ways to go before it becomes really kind of the successor to Windows 10. There's a lot of stuff. I haven't been running them, but I've been kind of casually keeping track of all the insider builds.
Yeah.
And what new things have been changing in them. And there's been a lot of progress on that front in terms of tweaking the UI and getting it to be more user friendly or more usable again. I think 11, they went too minimalist with right off the bat.
Okay.
Like at work, I was thinking, okay, so, maybe we start getting our PCs at work ready to go to Windows 11. Because then we can get off of Windows 10 and just follow this, that new release cycle and everything for 11.
Right.
You can't even customize the UI for 11 the same way you can with 10.
Oh.
Like all the more they really give you right now, like out of the box Windows 11, is do you want all the start menu and everything in the middle of the taskbar or on the left side? Like you have way fewer ability to even customize what apps show up in the taskbar.
Oh.
Like there's no way for an admin to remove the Windows Store from the taskbar.
That sucks.
And you could do all of that in Windows 10.
Yeah.
You could totally customize the whole thing. It's all well documented and it worked from version to version to version. So every new feature update for Windows 10, you didn't really have to worry too much about are your previous processes for customizing this for your users going to break. It's more or less it just kept going.
Right.
Then 11 dropped and it's just like, hi, here's a consumer OS that you're supposed to run your enterprise on. And I'm like, no. Microsoft said they're still going to give us another 5 years of support for Windows 10. So I'm at this point really in no hurry to upgrade anyone to it. And the machine that I upgraded is not a daily driver by any means. It's my ThinkPad X1 Extreme. So I think a lot of other people are kind of along the same lines. Yeah, it's just a wait. It's a waiting game for Microsoft to probably, it's sad to say, at the pace they're going, it's probably going to be another year or two.
That's exactly
we get there. But
yep.
Eventually, I think they'll get there to the point where at least you'll have feature parity. Mm-hmm. And the big bugs will have been ironed out, and you don't really have to worry about app compatibility or anything like that. And then, okay, fine, we'll make the switch.
Right. Somebody asked me, I think my father-in-law, he's like, my computer keeps asking me to upgrade to Windows 11. Should I do that? I said, no. He is like, when do you think I should do that? And I said, personally, like the rig I'm using right now, it's my workstation. It's what I put bread on the table with. I'm waiting at least a year, if not more, for Windows 11 to get fully fleshed out. And that's not me taking a stance of saying Windows 11 sucks. I can't say that because I haven't used it enough to make any decision on it.
Right.
We've gotten, it seems like generally we've gotten used to Windows 10 so far as we'll say, well, Windows 10 isn't terrible. I mean, there's obviously little kinks in anything. There's things about Mac OS that I don't like. But Windows 11 is too much of a like, I use DaVinci Resolve every single day. I use all these proprietary programs every single day, and they're constantly releasing patches and updates, but I don't want to ever say my project isn't ready yet because I can't go back. I know you can go back to Windows 10, but my RTX 3090 isn't playing well.
Right.
With
I mean, you're
Windows
working
11.
on a schedule, right? Like
right.
You got to deliver consistently, and your tools have to work.
Exactly.
And so you've got to go with the tools that work, right? I mean, and that's kind of why I think, especially in the professional space, you still see people using older equipment and older software and older tools because they're always on deadline. So why take that risk? They'll upgrade only when they have to, or only when the new version has become stable for a long period of time and they're comfortable making that upgrade. I mean, I do the same thing, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I mean, the new Mac OS Monterey came out last fall. I only upgraded my main machine to it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. I've got the M1 up to, was it 12.1? Is that what it is now?
Yeah, we're on 12.1. They're getting very close to releasing 12.2.
And I can only speak for DaVinci Resolve. That's what I use most of the time on the M1. Is everything that I use on the M1 MacBook Pro under 12.1 has been just fine. Like I forgive me for saying this, and maybe this might be blasphemy, but it seems to me like updates that Mac does are generally more stable and reliable than Windows constant breaking things with every update. Not that Mac is perfect, not that Apple is perfect in that regard, but it's like sometimes Windows does an update and I hold off on the update so long because I wait because I know I'm going to do this update and there's something's not going to work right. So I push off the update. Let me get this project out, have a little buffer zone of let's see what this update's going to do. And then I do it like after, something non-time critical. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of where I'm at with Windows 11 too. I'm going to wait at least a year. Colin, I have taken up a lot of your time. We've been talking about an hour. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yep.
We've done like 2.5 hours before, but I really just wanted
covered a lot this time. I think we've been getting better at getting to the point, which is something I've been really trying to focus on more. Is just not so much continuous chatter and repeating myself. But
that's the tough thing. And this really is the last thing I'm going to say is when I got into radio and I wanted a radio show, the bosses and higher ups like, okay, give us 17 minutes of like of a demo show or whatever. And I remember thinking it was like 10 minutes. I'm like, how am I going to keep talking nonstop for 10 minutes? The problem is shutting up.
Yeah.
At 10 minutes. It's getting the information out that you need to say in 10 minutes because we will ramble on. The stream of consciousness. That's the key to making succinct podcasts and podcasts less so much because you don't have to hit commercial breaks, really in podcasts. They float if anything. Whereas in radio, it's like we're doing the news at 29:50. It's a hard out. You need to say what you're going to say succinctly, get your point across in that amount of time because we're out. We're going to the next show at this time. But yeah, so you're on that journey that I am still constantly on, and I am doing a bad job right now of wrapping up, keeping it within time. But I will say that we've recorded for almost just about an hour. I don't know where the time stamp is going to be on the video, but we did pretty good. So Colin, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I will cut it up into a 39-minute thing for radio too, but this is going to be the full-length podcast. And thank you so much for coming on. And go grab Colin's tape. I'll put the links in the podcast description and on the YouTube video. So yeah, once again, Colin, thank you so much.
Hey man, anytime.
And that's a good out. Anytime, and then just cut it.